What's up and what's happening, TPE fam? We're back with another episode of the Pivot Experience podcast, where our focus is to help leaders pivot into their next. This episode is a very special episode. I've had the opportunity to run into and meet this gentleman who is going to be the guest for our show today. I had the pleasure of interviewing Abram Moon. He is a Virginia native who works for the world's most caring company, Chick-fil-A, as well. And he is well on his way to being an operator. I enjoyed our conversation thoroughly. I believe there's a lot of things that we discussed that can help you gain more perspective on your journey in leadership. And I don't want to take up too much of our time on the intro, so let's get ready to enjoy the episode. What's up and what's happening, TPE family? I am excited to be back with you guys with another episode of the TPE podcast, where we devote time on speaking on matters of leadership. As you guys know, I like to bring in guests that I think that's going to add value to you guys' leadership journey, because here at the TPE, we're all about helping leaders pivot into their next. And so without much introduction from me, I'm going to let this young man speak for himself. I ran across this individual on LinkedIn. We got connected because obviously we work for the world's most caring company, Chick-fil-A. And I just kept looking at his posts, and I really enjoyed the things that he was saying on LinkedIn. And I seen that he had some social proof. He had some great relationship equity with some other leaders in the chain. And I was like, man, I got to get connected with this guy. And, being really real here, ego kind of stops you from who's going to approach who's going to say something. And we've been lightly interacting with each other. But I've got Abram Moon here. And I'm going to let you tell where you're from, what's your story. Let's just get right into it.
Good afternoon or good morning, wherever you're watching from. My name's Abram. I've been with Chick-fil-A for 10 years in May. So it's been a while. Started off when I was 16, had no idea that I would still be working with Chick-fil-A this many years later, but I really found a passion and a joy in making other people smile and finding connection through a chicken sandwich. Outside of the restaurant, I'm a husband to my beautiful wife, Courtney, and I've got two daughters. One's still in the oven, and she's baking in there. And then I've got a 2-year-old. And so they take up a lot of my time. I just literally yesterday submitted my final assignment for my bachelor's degree in organizational leadership from Point University. So I'm really excited about that. It was a long journey, but I'm super grateful for my journey. I was able to finish my degree completely debt free, and now I'm in this in between spot as I'm pursuing to own my own Chick-fil-A restaurant. I submitted my application last Wednesday. So for me, I am in the process and in the waiting game, but trust in God nevertheless.
So I think if I count it correctly, I think 3 congratulations are in order, right? I think I heard. So first and foremost, congratulations. Well, no, say four congratulations. First of all, congratulations for the baby.
Thank you.
First and foremost, right? Number 2, congratulations for 10 years at Chick-fil-A.
Thank you.
Number 3, congratulations on getting your degree. And I can say this publicly because by the time this airs,
Yeah.
this event would have already passed. I know you guys are graduating from Point on May 4th.
Correct.
We actually have a graduate here in town that's graduating too. So we're making a trip. I'm not coming, but our operator and a few other leaders are going, kind of multi-purpose trip between visiting the support center and hanging out there. But they'll be at that graduation. So you'll see some people from my store at that Point graduation. So congratulations there. And then now, big time, congratulations to you for submitting your application to become a Chick-fil-A owner operator. And so let's advance the conversation at that point. I know you said you want to make people the connection through the chicken sandwich, and I love the way you framed that. But what is it about Chick-fil-A that makes you want to have a long-term career with them?
For me, it's really the whole idea of Truett Cathy and who he was as a person. One of the things that stuck out to me that really made me think about Chick-fil-A as more than just a high school job was when I heard the story about Eddie White. And for those of you guys that don't know the story of Eddie White was a team member that was working for Truett Cathy, had to be, I guess, in the 60s or 70s, maybe. And Eddie was working and going to school. And there was a point where his dad came and said, "Hey, man, you've got to stop going to school and you just got to work, right? You got to help us provide the family." And the reason why that particular story stuck out to me is because my grandparents on both sides, on my dad's side and my mom's side, they both had to forego their dreams to pursue taking care of their family, right? My dad's mom wanted to go to New York City and be an attorney, was not able to do that. She was the oldest of 12 kids, and so she had to stay home and help take care of the family. My great grandmother on my mother's side, she stopped going to school in the third grade. Because she was hungry, she couldn't eat, and so she had to figure out a way to provide for herself. And so when I heard that story of where this guy Eddie, his story would have been very similar, right, in the rural South to my relatives, but Truett Cathy stepped in. Not only did he raise money to send this gentleman to school in his restaurant in a mayonnaise jar, this is also the start of the Chick-fil-A scholarship. When Eddie came and said, "I just still don't have enough," Truett covered the additional costs and then took him down to an expensive department store in Georgia and said, "Hey, I really want to make sure you have enough clothes, not just your room and board, not just your tuition, but I want to make sure you have enough clothes to go to school and be taken care of." And so for me, that was a moment when I realized, man, this is a little bit more. And as I continued working there as a teenager, getting more responsibility, I want to say when I was 17 is when I started to really get real responsibility. A year into the company, I started training people, and then they kind of threw a one off at me. They actually entrusted me with doing phone screens on new applicants. We were transitioning our system from paper applicants to a digital system, which was fairly new at the time, called Snag-a-Job. And so my job was to call these applicants and screen them and ask them a list of questions. But the idea of being trusted with real responsibility and the idea is of getting results, right? It was new and it felt really good. And there were times throughout my career where it was unhealthy, and I've had to learn how to check that and balance that out, right? Um, because there are times in your career where you can be doing a lot of things for the business and getting those results and they feel great, but then you're maybe not pouring into yourself. You're not pouring into relationships that matter, and so on.
Yeah, no, I think, man. So you said some things that really struck a chord with me because, and this might not be the best thing for me to say in terms of my long term career with Chick Fil A,
Yeah.
but it's like I just don't hear a lot of the stories of Truett and the
Yeah.
things that he did. I think for you being here 10 years, you might have gotten hired right at his passing. I think he died in
Right
2014.
before, yeah, he died in, I want to say, September, and I joined the company in May. And
Yeah.
so for me, did not meet Truett ever. Met Dan, and he was great, but did not meet Truett. But I've spent a lot of time learning about Truett. I was actually fortunate. I want to say about last year. To spend about 2 to 3 hours on a phone call with Jimmy Collins, and Jimmy Collins was the president of Chick-fil-A from 1967 to 2000, and he just poured out. And it was really interesting to hear from somebody that helped build the brain of Chick-fil-A firsthand some of those stories about how, yes, Truett was nice and Truett was generous, but Truett had high expectations. Truett, meant when he asked you to do something and you told him you're going to do it, that he expected that you were going to deliver on what you said.
And man, this conversation is going to be a whole lot more than not say what I expected because I didn't think we would even talk about Truett.
Sure.
Because the thing is, man, you're absolutely right. I used to do grand openings when I was doing grand openings in 2008. I
Yeah.
never forget. I was in Louisiana, and we had one of the pre grand opening meetings, and one of the reps from home office. Well, it used to be called the home office. It's the support center
Yeah.
now, but from the home office came in and he had a quote from Truett that perfection is the expectation, but he'll tolerate excellence. Man,
Mm,
that sticks with me to this
yeah.
day because when you think about what we do in the restaurant, what we do in the organization, the crown is high.
That's right.
The crown is extremely high, and I think that statement, you
Yeah.
couple that statement with climbing with care and confidence. It's
Oh man.
another true quote,
Yeah.
and you put those two things together, man. I think in terms of a foundation of how you have of what your mindset is, I think that's what is the engine that fuels the results that we generate as an organization.
That's right.
Yeah, man. No. This is getting good. I like this. For sure. Because, man, for me, I've had the opportunity to meet Truett, and let me tell you, the time I met him, I might have been 17,
Yeah.
and I thought I was about to get I'm waiting on this amazing content, and I think
Yeah.
he was just talking to us about bagging the hot things separate and the cold things separate, and I was kind of stunned. I was like,
Yeah.
is that now as I'm older and I have a whole lot more understanding in the business.
Oh yeah.
He took that opportunity to drive home something that was probably
Yep.
something on their radar.
That's
Like,
right.
hey, we got these leaders here. Why not? If they're coming to here, and I remember it, so obviously it worked, right?
Yeah.
And, that was 13 years ago, and so,
Jeez.
man, no, the legacy. I can go on and on about just what Truett meant, even down to the quote. And I don't know if you remember this in the restaurant. There used to be a quote back at least in our restaurant, it was over the restrooms. Truett said, "Food is essential, therefore make it good."
Yes.
I used to
Yes.
look at that when we got a remodel. I used to look at that quote, and I used to be like, "That's such a cheesy thing. Why is it? Why is it?"
Man.
And then I started to think. As I matured in my leadership, I started to understand, like, especially COVID. I think
Yes. Oh my goodness.
COVID really drove that quote home for me. It's like, wow, when you strip away all these other things and you strip away and get down to the necessities of what we need to live, food is one of them.
That's
And
right.
why not make it good? So, man, no, and Jimmy Collins, you brought up, man, you bringing up some heavy thing, because again, this might put a damper on my career for me saying this, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
The legend has it, it's like Truett was the visionary, the entrepreneur, the guy who had the big vision, but Jimmy Collins was like the business, like the
Yeah.
the driver that kind of drove the day-to-day operations of the. I got the tie. I paid a nice chunk of change for the tie about 15 years ago, because I was just like, I gotta have that.
Yeah.
But anyway, I digress, man. No, the Kathy family, man. Just, I love being in earshot of
Yeah.
anything that they have to say. Man, we did a few, like, maybe I said a few years ago, it might have been 8 years ago. We went to Atlanta for a checkpoint, and
Okay.
they had one of the Kathy children, the grandkids, come in and talk to us, and he was just talking about, like, what they did as a family. Like, they have these annual vacations where all of the kids go out. They have intentional team building, and from a cultural standpoint, those are just things just not exposed to, on a regular basis. And so I truly feel that I'm blessed to be connected to a company that, yes, on the surface, we are fast food, quick service,
Right.
but there's so much that goes into what we do day in and day out. And I think people really miss the amount of lessons and the lives that are impacted beyond
Oh man.
just selling that sandwich, man. Okay. All right. So let's get back to the topic here a little bit, because I get riled up about that, man.
I love that. Same here.
When I met Dan Cathy the first time, and this is what these little moments, man, really stick out in my mind. We was at
Yeah.
Team Leader Summit. This is 2007. I
Okay.
walked up to Dan Cathy. Everybody wants to shake his hand. You know what he looks
Yeah.
like. You've seen him on the videos at the time. You've seen him on the DVDs, the
In person.
cassette tapes. So you
Yeah.
walk up to him. He looks at my name badge. He sees our store number and name. That's it. He
Yeah.
said, "Oh, you work for Robert." I mean, 2,000 stores, however many was. I mean, however many operators it is, for you
Yeah.
to be able to look at me, don't have a clue, and just see unit such and such, and then
Yeah.
store name. And I think and now, again, I get it now. We're in the people business, not the chicken business, and
Right.
it was at his advantage to know who Robert was. Robert was is a 42 plus year operator now. Now
Mhm.
I understand, like, okay, maybe Robert might have saw you as a teenager, as a
Sure.
kid,
Sure. Yeah.
but it's just one of those things where it's like, the company, I think, just means so much to not only to the consumer, but to the people who work for it. The
Us.
opportunities that have been afforded. You just mentioned going to Point. Now, I don't know if you guys are part of the program, but I'm assuming.
We are. We are. Yes.
But to be able to provide
Yeah.
debt-free college, and I know we're not the only game in town that does that, but for our model to be able to do that and all the other things you mentioned, the Chick-fil-A scholarship, that is just so much. And this is not really meant to be a Chick-fil-A commercial, but it really is starting to feel like starting to feel like it. But I want to get okay. Let's get back to you. So you want to be
Yeah,
an operator based off of this story from this operator, Mr. White, and what Truett did for him. But what
yeah,
is it about owning a business? You know,
yeah.
that's nice. That emotional thrill, but just like I do, being in the restaurant each and every day,
Oh, that's right.
dealing with the
It's
challenges.
hard. It's
What
hard.
what makes you want to take on that responsibility?
I tell you, it gets me going in the morning because I like to fix problems. I like to help other people see how to fix problems. I love to see the wheels turning in a leader's mind when I'm explaining and breaking down to them a complex issue, right? I love to see when we have made a shift in the restaurant operationally, the relief on the guest's face, right? We had an opportunity recently to go through a renovation. And initially, and this is why I want to be a Chick-fil-A operator specifically, is because of the partnership. You're in business for yourself, and I know you probably heard this, but you're not in business by yourself, okay? And so we had an opportunity. They were going to come in and put these canopies in, right? I'm sure you've seen them in a drive-through line. It protects us from the elements, okay? But initially, the initial plans were they were just going to take the two lanes that merge into one and just put canopies over that. But I had an opportunity to write what we call a custom project request. And I kind of just had a discernment about it. Like, I feel like we've got enough spot, enough. We got 2 acres of land. We should be able to do more than this. So I made a request that took and said, okay, instead of going, continue to go 2 to 1, let's go two all the way around. Let's have a double draft all the way around. And now that's the standard of how they built new restaurants. But because I was able to see that and get the support from the support center, our business has now been able to grow very rapidly, right? Um, and so reasons like that are why I want to specifically pursue Chick-fil-A, because you're in business for yourself, but you're not in business by yourself. And I really enjoy working in a restaurant, right? I truly do, right? There are parts of my job at this particular age and stage where I have to spend a lot more time on strategy and working on the business versus in it. But I love working a lunch rush. I love working a dinner rush. I'm not one of those guys that can spend, weeks on end without serving a guest in some shape, form, or fashion. It motivates me. It drives me. My wife was telling me earlier, she said, you could probably talk to somebody for 45 minutes about a cup of coffee. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just the kind of person I am. I really do get energized from people and hearing their stories. I'll never forget one time I was in the drive through. And this is back in my team member days, but I was taking somebody's order. And there's so many times we have an opportunity to ask somebody, how's your day going? And they're like, fine or whatever. But this particular lady, I asked her, I said, how's your day going? She was not okay. And I was like, well, what's wrong? Why's your day not okay? And she's like, my husband, he left me and he's abusive and all these things. And I asked that lady right then and there, I said, is it okay if I pray with you? That's not something I typically do, but I just felt led to do that. And so I did, and I prayed with her. And a few months later, she came back and told me, I'm in a much better situation now. And I just want to thank you for taking that time to pray with me. Right. And obviously, we can't pray with every single guest, that may not be efficient or effective. But I think when we can find those small opportunities to hear somebody else's story and figure out how we can serve them, that is what it's all about.
No, man, you're clicking on so many cylinders right now because I remember a few years ago at a Next, what used to be called
Yeah.
Seminar, but at a Next, Dan Cathy, and they were really emphasizing second mile service. That was
Mm,
that was a thing. When my operator used to talk about how hard it was to get for Truett to get the operators to say my pleasure, that was so foreign
yes.
to me. That was like, what? I mean, that's kind of like how. That's the kind of thing
Yeah.
we're known for. But at the time, second mile service wasn't as prevalent, and they were
Yeah.
really trying to push it. And I'll
Yeah.
never forget Dan Cathy, and Dan Cathy used to get there used to be rumblings of flack for this kind of thought, but like, man, he would say, if we do a good job operationally, we do a great job at the first mile. That is just a
Mhm.
hook to get
That's the
them
basic.
but that's the foundation for us to minister to people. Like
Ooh,
so
that's
so
good.
so so, so that's what you're describing to me.
Yeah,
Through the excellence of Chick-fil-A,
yeah,
we have the reputation to draw people, no matter what their circumstance is, no matter what they're feeling, and then
yeah.
having leadership in place like yourself to be able to have the wisdom and the discernment to say, hey,
Yeah.
I need to activate something different here.
Well, that's
You
good.
might have not have had that opportunity if
Yeah,
we were not operationally excellent. We were not
that's right.
as good as we were. We weren't as efficient as we were.
I mean, for example, if I had been taking orders over the headset versus taking orders face to face, missed opportunity.
Yeah, and man, and I want to piggyback. I want to go back to something you said earlier
Yeah,
about just the partnership that Chick-fil-A is. Like I remember, and again, this might sound weird to you because I mean I think you came in at 14. This was happening way before then, but I remember when in Houston when there was a store 249 in Jones Road. Forgive me if you're
yeah,
listening out there and I'm messing up these names and store names and people, but there was there was these girls who had these cell phones and
yeah,
they were calling in orders and writing them
yeah.
down on pads of paper.
Mm.
Do you ever remember, you probably wasn't around for this. They used
No,
to
I wasn't. I heard stories about it.
This is the beginning of face to face
Yeah,
where at grand openings they used to ship out flip cell phones and used to order these post-it notes that had
yeah.
Chick-fil-A drive-through experience on them from the warehouse, not Supply Central, from
Oh,
warehouses. They
yes, I
used to
remember the warehouse. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
so from the warehouse. And so, man, I remember them innovating. How there was really the catalyst in my mind.
yeah,
I could be wrong again for you're watching this if I'm off, but this is just my frame of reference. But
yeah.
I remember how we would tinker with drive through
Oh, yeah.
different systems to try to make it efficient because we had a business that was demanding it.
That's right.
And the cool thing is, like you said, to have the lead way to say, hey, yo, I see something here. Corporate, this is what I'm seeing. This is what I believe can happen. These are our geographical advantages.
Yeah,
How can we fit something here to make us make a strategic bet or to dare greatly in this area? So like that, I was an engineering major in college when
man.
I was coming out of I graduated in 2006, and my
Yeah,
goal was to go to Detroit and build engines for General Motors. That was my thing. But I went to my
yeah,
first grand opening in 2008. Chick-fil-A put me on my first plane. I went to California, and just the idea to say, and then you said it, to see something and go, hey, what if we did this? And then
yeah,
the immediate gratification, the immediate, like, I mean, there's moments all day, every day where you can go, hey, I think we can do 15 more cars today. I think we
oh,
can do
yeah,
25 more cars today. And do you know what the
yeah.
impact of that would be on a month annual basis? Then
Oh,
you
that's
get the
good.
you get the buy-in from the crowd based off of the potential results, and then you start to
Yeah,
tinker. And then I don't know, man. The Chick-fil-A community is so cool with sharing the best practices and
yeah,
sharing these different things. That's what drew me to business. I totally
yeah.
changed my whole. I mean, I'm not being. I felt like I could get the same level of satisfaction
Yes,
being a manager at Chick-fil-A that I would being an engineer because I was able to exercise my mental faculties and capacity to be able to churn a
yeah,
result, man. Yeah,
that's good.
definitely. So how would you say how has personal growth played a role in where you're at now? Like in terms of like, I guess, what do you do currently? What did you do before? What does that look like for you?
Personal growth has been everything, and in various aspects of my life. Right, I think sometimes personal growth can be what leadership book are you reading? Um, Depending on the season of my life, it looks like stop, start, and start. Right, and so generally, it was reading books. Right, what leaders are readers. Right, if you are waiting on your leader to develop you, you may be waiting forever. Right, you truly may be waiting forever because, as we talked about, business ownership is hard. Right, we just walked out or just kind of came out of one of the most challenging talent environments in recent history, right? And so leaders and business people, they're trying to figure out how just to open the doors, how to get staffed. And so they may not be able to go and provide you with a PDP or personal development plan. And so I was always taught early on by my first operator, Greg Williams, you have to be in the driver of your development. And so I've read plenty of books. I love anything Maxwell. One of the first books I read actually was by Mark Miller, and that was The Heart of Leadership. And so really, went into this whole iceberg method, and right, how when you think about an iceberg, 10% of it is what you see above water, but there's a whole 90% underwater, and those are intangibles, right? Those are things like your character, right? You can't see somebody's character by looking at them. They may be able to talk the talk, but the question is, can they walk the walk when nobody's looking, right? And I think that's a thing that, especially in the restaurant industry, that we have to be very careful of, is making sure that we're not just identifying people that work hard, right, to be our leaders and selecting them to be our leaders, but we're finding people that can actually live out the values. Because if you've got good character, I can teach you everything else about Chick-fil-A, right? And there's a point in your leadership where it's not so much about how fast you can bag an order or how fast you can do the window. If you can be friendly, right, and you know how to communicate with people, whether that's guests or team members, then you'll be successful. And so working on that has been critical for me. Being in touch with God, praying, right? Staying in touch with the Word has been critical for my development, right? Listening to my wife has been in touch with my development, right? It drives me crazy sometimes when I have friends. I don't know, my wife is saying this. Oh, you need to listen to her, right? If you believe that that's who God sent you, then you need to listen to what she's saying. But having truth tellers around me, whether that's friends, whether that's my operators, whether that's my colleagues, but making sure that you don't just have a bunch of yes people around you. Even with my director team, we've been very adamant about making sure that if you don't agree with something, then yeah, let's hash that out. Let's have that discussion, right, when the time is right. When we are having those kind of debates and conversations. But don't just say yes just for the sake of it, right? Because you, with your life experience, with your business experience, and just who you are, who God uniquely designed you to be, you may look at something completely different than I would have ever even thought about it.
Wow, man, that was a loaded answer. And I guess I want to, from a, and again, the pivot experience is all about
Yeah.
helping leaders pivot, not just organizationally, but as in their lives as well. And I think you
Yeah.
spoke to something that I think reflects that. Husbands, listen to your wife. I think that's something that doesn't get said enough.
Yeah.
You might not always agree, you might not
That's
always
right.
see eye to eye, but your wife is in place to, that's the person who has your best interest
Oh my
at
gosh.
heart. um and and they know you.
They know you better than anybody else, right? They have literally seen you, as naked as anybody have, right? And so
Hmm.
you got to make sure that you got to be able to take down the bravado of being a leader with somebody. You got to be vulnerable with somebody. And if you can't do it with your spouse, then I feel bad for you.
Yeah, no, that's 100%. And I know, particularly a lot of younger married couples,
Yeah.
that might be a pinch point for them. That's a
Yeah.
bottleneck for them, because we have what we feel like this idea of what the world might say what marriage
Oh man.
is,
Yeah.
versus what it really is.
That's it.
And it's not about perfection. It's about
Yeah.
being able to grow with one another. That is the, I think, the purpose of the union, is to be able to be a refining mechanism for each other. So now I'm so glad you said that, because a lot of times we get on these things and we keep it straight and narrow, and we avoid the personal piece. But I'm
Yeah.
glad you leaned into that. If you were to strip away all of Chick-fil-A, and I think that's pretty hard maybe with the amount of time you've been around, but if you
Sure.
take away Chick-fil-A, what's left?
I would say a believer, right? I tell you, so I'll give you a little bit of my story here personally. I lost my dad when I was 8. Okay, he was murdered, and that was really hard, right? I went through a lot of therapy, and I had a village around me, my mom and my family, that really supported me. But I wouldn't have got through that without God. And so, Chick Fil A or no Chick Fil A, I know God has me. Scripture tells us he won't put more on us than we can bear. And so I lean into that. When days get long and heavy, I remember who sent me here, right? And the role I'm in, I prayed for this job, right? I see people post it all the time. You know, uh, don't forget God when you get what you prayed for. And so for me, that's kind of where I'm at in life right now is, I'm in this process of trying to become a Chick-fil-A operator. And I do believe that I was called to it. But if for some reason God has something else for me, he'd said it in Jeremiah. Before we were formed in our mother's wombs, he knew the plans he had for us, right? So you strip all that away. I'm a husband. I'm a believer. I'm a father. I'm a friend. Um, and so Chick-fil-A is in a lot of ways what I do, but it's not who I am. And I think for me, I'm so grateful for Chick-fil-A because of this environment of continuous improvement and continuous development, right? Dan Cathy, the chairman of the board, wears a name tag that says in training, right? And so because of that mindset, I've constantly been in training, right? Whatever role I've been in, I've always been trying to figure out how I can be the better version of myself. And now a lot of ways that shifted so much from just trying to be a great leader now to where I'm really leaning in, how can I be a better father? How can I be a better husband? How can I just be overall a better person, a better Christian, right? Because at the end of the day, people will know you by your fruit. And so if you're not bearing fruit, what are you doing? And so that's where I'm at. I am really striving just to be the best Abram I can be. Not for operator, not so I can get selected for some restaurant somewhere, but just so that when my kids go back and they talk about who their dad was, when my wife talks about, in our 50-year anniversary party, right, how it was being married to me, it's not, well, it was great when I saw him. No. It's like we had a great life together because we were intentional. We did hard things together, but we got through them together.
Man, you know what? If they don't select you, I don't know what's might be some other thing now. Man, no, I love your story. I love everything that you currently represent, man. I think you are firing on all cylinders. From what I can tell, you are a remarkable leader, and the people who you serve in your organization are lucky to work in and around your leadership. What would your team say you are as a leader? Who are you as a leader? What are you known for when they think of Abram in the restaurant?
I would probably say change. I'm always trying to figure out how we can make any system, any process a centimeter better, right? How can we shave off a second off this process so the team member has a better experience, so the guest has a better experience? I love there's this book out there, Founder Mentality, and basically, just in short, what it talks about is this whole idea that when you have the founder's mentality, you're not going to have a meeting about system change without thinking about the team member, without thinking about the stakeholders. And that's one thing I also love about Chick-fil-A is typically when a lot of these field facing roles, they really look for people that have Chick-fil-A experience, right? And even if they don't, they train them and put them out in the field and make sure they kind of have some of that hands-on experience. But that is critical because if you have people in positions that don't understand the role that they're going to affect, it's not going to hit as hard. They're going to make decisions and not understand the implications that one simple decision makes on a whole flow of a system. And so for me, I would say probably change management and then leadership development. I'm always talking to them about leadership, whether that's just leading themselves personally. I mean, last week I had a meeting with somebody, we talked about their personal finances, right? I mean, so that's another thing I just love about the role that I'm in is I get to touch people's lives in just many different ways. And like anything, it's whatever people take from it. Some people were just talking about the business because that's all we want to talk about. Some people were talking literally about their retirement and how they're gonna pay their bills throughout that. So
Man, no, Abram, this has been more than a pleasure for me to have
awesome.
you on this broadcast today. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. You've already alluded to the fact that you've got a lot of things going on, so I don't take for granted that you spent some time here with us. And for those of you guys out there listening, this was a very Chick-fil-A specific conversation, but I believe that the things that we discuss are applicable no matter what field you're in.
That's right.
So
That's
whether
right.
that's you, if you're in food, retail, whatever the industry is, there was something said, particularly by Mr. Moon here, that I think will catapult you as a leader, or at least start the thought of how do I get better? How do I get a centimeter better? There's been plenty of conversation, and I want to challenge you guys to reflect back on the things that make you who you are. I think Abram
Mm.
sounds very in tune with the checkpoints in his life that have molded him to the current form of a man that he is now, and he really understands those factors that contribute to what he wants to do. So I challenge anybody who's listening, if you're looking to become a Chick-fil-A operator, and this is not just that, this is for you to understand where your life is going as well. Think about those things and think about the things that shaped you, and you might find that you have some wrinkles that you might need to iron out, some unresolved things that need to be looked at as well. But Abram, so much. Thank you so much. You've blessed our audience.
Thank you, Alex.
I believe with some great things. I know at minimum, I already be able to get some good content, and that's
Come
not what
on
it's
now.
about. But man, no. Thank you guys so much. TPE family, another great episode in the books. You can check us out on where you find your favorite podcast, on Apple, Google, Spotify. This episode will also be airing on YouTube, so you can find us at the Pivot Experience on YouTube as well. And until next time, TPE family, peace.
Tap into the Pivot Experience, where we help young, hungry entrepreneurs move on to the next step.